I'm going to start with Kenia. Kenia has done a great project on backyard biodiversity, and she's going to tell us how she engaged a neighborhood in that project and what she did there. So Kenia.
So thank you everyone for coming. Good morning. My name is Kenia Ampuero, and my project is the Backyard Biodiversity Project, What's in Your Backyard? So first, just some background on the problem that my project is trying to address. So as urbanization keeps on expanding, there's less land available for wildlife. And this affects the natural ecosystem cycles as well as biodiversity. So when we think about biodiversity, we usually think about exotic species that live in exotic places far away from home. We never really think about the biodiversity that can be found in an urban setting. That can be birds, butterflies, bees, and insects. These species are important because they support ecosystem functions, which later turn into the goods and services that we all humans need in order to survive. For example, bees help pollinate the crops we eat, plants provide the oxygen we breathe, and then some insects act as the foundation of some food chains that we depend on. So since most of our interactions take place in an urban setting, I thought it was important to start by preserving the biodiversity that is right outside our door. So I wanted to create something that was going to help bring back the connection between human and nature in an urban setting. The main barrier to this issue is that there is lack of education and awareness on this topic, because most people don't really know about biodiversity or care about it, because they can't relate to these issues because they don't experience them firsthand. And just some background on how my project came about. It's part of the work that's being done by the Happy Woods Project, led by Dr. Scott Flautier, who is a professor here at the university. And his research focuses on increasing sustainability and happiness in neighborhoods. So I wanted to build on those efforts by targeting the educational aspect. So about my project specifically, like the name says, it's on backyard biodiversity, specifically how gardens can serve as wildlife habitats by providing food and shelter, and how we can benefit from having a garden that attracts biodiversity. So the project took place in Victory Acres neighborhood here in Tempe. We focused on 4 houses, and these 4 houses are the same ones that are part of the Happy Woods project, and that's where they're directing their efforts to right now. What I did was that I created a guideline that I was targeted for the current and future residents of Victory Acres, and really anyone who's interested in gardening or biodiversity. So the goal of this project was to encourage residents to garden with more than just aesthetics and food production as their goal, but to garden with biodiversity in mind. So how I went about my project, so throughout the course of 3 months, I went to the neighborhood. I got to know the area, I got to know the people, built relationships with the residents. Once I had like an overall understanding of how much knowledge they had regarding biodiversity and topics related to that subject, I developed a survey for the residents where I targeted the most important topics that I wanted to address in my guidelines. After that, I showed it to the residents, I got their feedback, and we kind of created like a learning environment where we could go back and forth talking about the topics that were on my guide. So make sure they understand everything that's on it. And once that was done, I gave it to a graphic designer so that they could illustrate it. So here's an example, this is one part of the guide. This is a section that has the vegetation that you could incorporate in your backyard and what benefits it brings. So we have here the plant name, then some tips on companion planting and pest control, some general information, and what type of biodiversity can be attracted by planting these species. We try to keep the biodiversity kind of general, because we didn't want to overwhelm the residents with like technical information or species names, because they're just beginners. And most of the plants that are in this section were suggestions from the residents, because we wanted to make sure that we involve them throughout the process. This is another, unfortunately you can't really see it, it's kind of small, but this is the part of the guide that talks about more like educational stuff, kind of like terminology, like meet your pollinators, how you can attract them, why should we care about biodiversity, what is pollination, just trying to make it appealing so that they could really like it and learn from it. So with this information, what I wanted to do is just kind of create a bundle of knowledge for the residents so that they can become the best wildlife-friendly gardeners. There's more of the guideline, beneficial insects and some pests, kind of like some drawings so they could identify them in their garden if they see them. This is a design of one of the residents' garden. This is not what it looks like right now. This is just an idea. We make this so that the residents can get like a clearer picture of what their garden might look like. So we show this to them, and then we go back and forth and try to ask them if they are okay with this, if they like it, if they want to change anything else. And I didn't draw this. This was done by Jason Tibbetts, who was part of the Happy Woods project, and he's the permaculture expert. In terms of findings, so the first one that I want to address is the residents' overall knowledge. It was found that the residents had little in-depth knowledge regarding biodiversity. 3 out of the 4 residents said that they had never heard the term biodiversity before. And when I asked them what they thought the threats to biodiversity were, they all said pollution. However, I did find out that once I explained this terminology to them in simpler words, they were able to relate to the concepts, and they were excited about sharing stories that related to biodiversity, or kind of like share with me the knowledge that they have on this topic. In terms of the residents' interest in the project, when I asked them what they thought, why they thought that having a garden that attracts biodiversity was important, the 3 most common responses, which are this one, and this one, well, they said that it helps you to live more sustainably, that it helps you to have a better edible landscape, and it helps you to have a greener home. Another example of the residents' interest can be seen in this picture. This is one of our residents. Her name is Terry. She was really excited about attracting hummingbirds to her backyard. So she went and got this hummingbird feeder that you can see in the picture. And every time I went over to her house, she would tell me stories. Like in the morning, she would see hummingbirds going to the hummingbird feeder, and that it was time to refill it because they had been drinking all the nectar. So I think these are 2 great examples of the positive correlation between gardening, biodiversity, and happiness and well-being. In terms of the relationship between biodiversity, gardening, and humans, all 4 residents agreed that biodiversity is important for our ecosystem, and that having green spaces affect happiness and well-being in a positive way. I have also included 3 quotes from different residents, and I think these quotes reinforce the positive relationship the residents attribute to the relationship between gardening, biodiversity, and humans. In terms of reducing the disconnect between humans and nature, although the project doesn't propose a direct approach to closing this gap, by encouraging and empowering the residents to garden with biodiversity in mind, we are already increasing human-nature connectivity and empathy. For example, before the project, some residents saw bugs as just meaningless creatures that serve no purpose, and they just wanted to get rid of them. And after the project, some of the residents saw these species as beings that could enhance their gardening experience, because they could help with plant pollination and provide pest control. In terms of outcomes, here I have included 2 quotes from 2 different residents, and I think these quotes show that the project was effective in providing a supportive learning environment in which behavioral change could be influenced by motivating the residents to become wildlife-friendly gardeners. However, obviously, there's still room for improvement. I only had about 3 months to put this project together, and to create long-term behavioral change, we need more time. But I think this is a great start, and as you can see with the quotes, there's already been a small shift in the perceptions and knowledge that the residents have towards gardening with biodiversity in mind. In terms of lessons learned, the first one is learning to balance the tension of increasing biodiversity and stopping these species to eat the vegetables that we have planted in our garden. So this can be a little tricky because it requires patience. You have to learn not to intervene and not to react negatively to something that you might think it's a pest. It might be, it might not, but the best course of action here is to just let nature take care of it on its own. And the second lesson learned is to balance what the residents want to incorporate in the yard versus what makes sense regionally. And this is where sustainability kind of plays a role, because if we want a system to remain for a long period of time, we have to make sure that the people involved in the system are okay with it and are part of the process. So if we go and tell the residents what to plan, what to do, and we just impose, then they're really not going to care about the system, and once we leave, they're just going to go back to their old ways. So I think it's important to find a middle ground and compromise between what they want and what we offer. And I think this is a great opportunity for the guideline to come into place, because it will provide the residents with information and they can make educated decisions. For conclusion, so overall, although the project's timeline was short and the sample size was small. We only had a focus group of 4 people. I think that efforts to make a change don't have to be huge to make a difference. I think that making a change in just a few people, like the project did, is already a success. And overall, the residents who participated on this project have a better understanding on what biodiversity is, how it benefits their gardening experience, and how it affects their happiness and well-being. And finally, this guide can be used as a conservation tool to can be used as a tool to strengthen conservation efforts by encouraging the residents to live sustainably and in harmony with nature. Real quick, before we run out of time, future direction. So I hope that my project is used by the Happy Hoods project as the Scott's work continues to expand. More houses can be involved with the guideline, and maybe all of them have amazing backyards, and the neighborhood can become kind of like a biological corridor in which species can travel from one house to the other. And then maybe a student in SOS 498, which is the Happy Hoods class, can take over my project and then just monitor it or even make it better, and just keep on fostering the culture around human-nature interactions in the neighborhood. And yeah, that's it.